One quick to Flora's presentation. I'm not famous. Maybe I will be in the future, but not yet. So today I will be presenting you one of the research projects that I have been working on for a really long time, and it's about, as you can see, launching products during recessions. And probably we started working on this project as a team with Stephen and Con in around like 2009, 2010. And since then, we have been through multiple recessions, mild or severe recessions in the US. And, we had a chance during this time period, we had a chance to run our analyses, multiple times with new data. And, the results that I'm going to present have been consistent throughout these years. So, in that sense, it's kind of like an interesting project. And my reason, the reason for me to pick this project to present to you is, the other projects I'm working on, they can be a little bit more on the technical side. From a marketing standpoint, more, let's say, more theoretical aspects, more than this and that. But this is about products and recessions. We all use products, and we are all aware of recessions. We always, read about them, we live through them. So I thought this would be a more familiar topic for the audience here. And just so you know, as you know, I had another presentation before this today. It was on a different topic. So this is the first time I'm presenting this after a long time. And I hope everything will go well. The situation of this project is we had an article published on this research, but as you know, once you publish one thing, your job is not over. Now we are trying to build on what we have achieved. And in that sense, during this presentation or after this presentation, if you have any recommendations, if you have any ideas as to how we can build on the findings of this study, please share them with me. That's essentially, at least for me, the purpose of this presentation. So maybe you don't know much about like the technical parts of marketing, but you know the recessions, you understand how economy works. So any kind of recommendations you have will be greatly appreciated about this research. So with that said, I am the first author of this project, and then I have my colleague, Stephen Cergy. He's currently an associate professor in Essex Business School. And we have Kim Powells, who is currently in Northeastern University. And this presentation is about launching products during recessions. We look into 2 different countries and 2 different industries. There are various reasons for this. I will explain them during the presentation. So, there you go. So, if we start with what companies do during recessions, all right? The companies' reactions to recessions are mixed. In the sense that, maybe, as you can see here, in 2001, Sony held off on releasing new products during a recession. Whereas, somebody that we talked to, who's a manager in a large Turkish FMCG company, they say, they also held off during launch, but a chief marketing officer in a Romanian bank, he says, during the recession, we just launch products. Okay, so basically, recessions happen and companies' reactions to these recessions change. All right, so that's kind of the situation. there is no one unique response from companies. Sometimes they wait, sometimes they just go ahead and do whatever they are doing. When it comes to the research on this issue, as to what you should do in terms of marketing during recessions, there's quite a bit of research. As an example, Lamy et al. In 2007, they looked into private label products with private labels, and what happens to their sales during recessions. Private labels are the store brands. When, for instance, when you go to, Carrefour, there's like the Carrefour branded products. Those are called private labels, and apparently they do better during recessions. It is no surprise, essentially, because usually they are good quality products. They are comparable to the branded products, but they come at a cheaper price. So it is normal for them to increase their market share, not because they sell more, but because branded products, like products with national brands, they sell less. So private label market share increases during recessions. Another study looks into advertising, and they say that advertising is cyclical most of the time. Cyclical in the sense that as the economy is getting better and better, advertising spending increases and increases. As the economy goes down, companies cut down on advertising spending. There are some variations among countries with regard to based on their cultural fabric of that country. But I mean, in general, advertising is cyclical with the economic activity. We also have another study that distinguishes between B2C and B2B companies. B2C companies are, just to make sure we're all on the same page, B2C companies are the companies that sell products directly to the end users, consumers. B2B is, companies that sell their products or services to other businesses. There are many companies do both. When you think about it, for instance, Apple, computer manufacturer, or phone. If you look at their computers, they sell, let's say, to universities. That's their B2B side, and they sell to us consumers. That's their B2C side. But I mean, this research shows that there are various implications. There are various implications for B2B companies and B2C companies during recessions. As an example, companies that they found that, Srinivas, Lillian, and Siddharth, they found that B2C companies, if they're manufacturing products, they should spend more on research and development, but do not change their advertising expenditure, and so on and so forth. And for B2C companies, if they're in service business, no products, they should spend more on R&D and less on advertising. So they found some results, which actually helped us with our paper as well. Some more, when we look at a few more articles, Chinkham and Fang, they looked into advertising during recessions, and no surprise, they found that if you advertise during recessions, you'll get more returns on your advertising activity. It is no surprise because during the, remember, advertising activities are cyclical. So as economy goes down, companies spend less on advertising. So if, as a company, you advertise more during a time when your competitors are not advertising, of course, you'll get more out of your advertising. So it's kind of expected. We also have another study about advertising and during recessions. And I will not go into all of those things, but another study, promotions and recessions. So what I'm trying to say is, in my field, marketing, there have been quite a few studies about recessions or business cycles, but most of them have focused on advertising. Okay, what you should do with your advertising spending and this and that. So that's usually their focus. There's even more research. On this table, I put a few of them, and most of them still are about, how you should adjust your advertising activity, promotional activity, and this and that. There were not many studies, maybe there weren't even any study that specifically focused on product launches. Should you launch a product during a recession? And some other details still about launching products. From a more general perspective, launching product, I mean, when we look into the new product development process, commercialization or launching a product is toward the end of the new product development process, and it just happens to be very, very cost intensive, because when you are launching a product, you have to advertise that product, you have to make it available, you have to make adjustments in your supply chain, and you have to coordinate it with your advertising activity. For instance, if you start advertising the launch of your product and say that you will launch your product in December 1st, but you cannot launch it in December 1st, there is some lost opportunity there, okay? Or vice versa. I mean, it's just you launch the product, it's on the market, but nobody knows. It will not sell more. It will not sell as much as it will. So launching products is an important concept, but for some reason, there were not many studies in marketing that looks into product launches during recessions. All right? And this is what we do in this project, and that's essentially our contribution to the literature. This lack of research is there, the link between product launches and recessions is there in terms of research, despite the fact that many practitioners support, let's say, launching products during recession. So I mean, there was something there, but for some reason there were not many studies. So in our research project, we had 3 questions to answer. We tried to answer 3 questions. The first one is, do new products launched during a recession perform better? It can be yes, it can be no. And usually in social sciences, as opposed to, I don't know, like natural sciences, right? I mean, we always say it depends. Do new products launched during a recession perform better? Yeah, but I mean, it depends. Because it's really in social sciences, it's always, I mean, there's always some contingencies that might change the outcome significantly. Okay? And so basically, I mean, in our case, we find that some products might be more successful if they are launched during recessions. Does the severity of the recession matter? Because some recessions are more severe. I mean, they cause a lot more trouble than the others. I mean, as an example, the 2008 recession in the US. I don't know when exactly that happened, when exactly it hit Europe, but there was a big recession in the US which started towards the end of 2007, right at the same time. Yeah, so that was a very severe recession. In the US, lots of people went bankrupt, and this and that, inflation, unemployment increased. I don't know the exact implications in Europe, but I remember Iceland as like the whole country. I think it went bankrupt. I kind of remember that. So I mean, it was a very severe recession, as opposed to some other recessions that are technically recessions, but they really do not cause a major change in people's lives. So severity, does it matter, or how does it matter? And probably one of the more important things we looked into in this paper, even within a recession, is there a better time to launch your product? In the sense that, I mean, let's say the recession started, you know that the recession has started. What should you do? Should you just launch your product right away, or is it better to wait a little bit and then launch your product? So we examined these things, these 3 research questions. We tried to answer them. And if I were to tell you what usually happens, probably, when I go over this table, you will agree with the explanations. So as to what happens, right? For instance, when I look at here, pictures. So when we look into a recession time versus an economic boom time, like the economy is expanding, everything is going well, versus during a recession, okay, what happens to the demand? These negative signs and plus signs, therefore, like it's a negative means it is bad. It has a negative impact for the company who is about to launch the product. Okay, so when a recession starts, some consumers they stop spending or they decrease their spending, and that is likely to have a negative impact on the companies. Okay, in doing so, I mean, consumers, since the times are tight, they will demand higher value from the products that they buy. What that means is they will either want to pay the same price but buy more, or a better product, or buy the same product at a reduced price. This is where those private label products come into play, because as far as the product quality goes, they are more or less of the same quality at a lower price, which means they provide better value, higher value. And consumers during recessions, they become more risk averse, and that is bad for the companies that think about launching products. So I mean, more risk averse means, I mean, usually it basically means they delay their spending, they buy less of the new products, because I mean every new product is a risk. We don't know the product itself, how it will perform, or we just don't know it, basically. Okay, and it's a risk. If you buy a toothpaste, if you buy a new toothpaste, it's a small risk, right? I mean, you buy a new toothpaste, for instance, which I had to do when we first came to France, right? There was various brands. I wanted to try local brands. I just bought something. I mean, it's okay. I mean, it just worked. But even if it didn't work, just a couple of euros at most, small risk. But I mean, if you're buying a car, for instance, a new car is a bigger risk, right? So it's just it will affect differently. On the other side, for companies for the companies that are planning to launch products, their competitors will stop spending money, okay, on advertising, on new technologies, which is a good thing. Which is a good thing for a company that's considering launching a new product, because competitors are not as fierce as they were during a boom time. Since the competitors' activities are in decline, it will be easier for a company. It will be better, of course. It will be better and easier for a company that is trying to launch a new product, because it will have a easier access to higher quality products or the same product at a lower cost, because the suppliers will still want to sell their products, but there are fewer buyers, so it will be easier. And on the other hand, if during the recession still you can think about launching new products, it's a signal for firm health, and it plays nicely to the company, to the hands of the company that is planning to launch a new product. So on the demand side, the demand is in decline during recession, but when you look into the supply side of things, launching a new product might be a little bit easier. When it comes to the severe versus mild recessions, during a severe recession, consumers will stop spending altogether, either voluntarily, right, or involuntarily, because they will have, they lose their jobs, so they can't spend money, or they will just spend less, especially during a severe recession. So it is bad, and that is bad. I mean, that's bad for consumers as well, but from our perspective, it is bad for the company which is thinking about launching a product. On the other hand, during a severe recession, your competitors, some of them, will go out of business. So it's a good opportunity for you. I mean, it might even be your company buying out your competitors. So it's even better in that sense. And it happened a lot. I mean, during the 2008 recession, many airlines, they went bankrupt. There was Northwest Airlines. It was my favorite, but Delta Airlines, for instance, purchased it. I like Delta too, but I really like Northwest. So I mean, those things happen. When it comes to end versus start of the recession, towards the end of a recession, we assume that consumers will have adapted to the hard times. So maybe they will have adjusted their spending and everything, so they are more attuned to what's going on, and maybe they will realize that there are not many new products out there. So it might work into companies that are planning to launch products. And but on the other hand, whatever savings they might have towards the end of the recession, they will have less of it, or maybe none of it. And usually towards the end of the recession, increased unemployment will be an issue as well. So, and these are not good things for a company that's planning to launch new products. And also, competitors will begin spending, because just like consumers adapt to the recession, competitors will adapt to recession as well, and they will resume their spending on marketing activity, and it is likely to have a negative impact on a company that's planning to launch new products. So this is basically, I mean, in a nutshell, what happens during recessions from consumer's perspective and from the company's perspective. As you can see here, it is hard to come up with one unique answer to this question. So, do new products launched during a recession perform better? I mean, yes, if you look only at the supply side factors, yes, if you launch a product during recession, your product is more likely to be successful. But I mean, on the other hand, when you look at the demand side factors, your job is a lot more difficult. So, I mean, there's no just one single unique answer to this, which is a good opportunity for us to conduct research on. In order to examine this, we have two data sets. The first data set is from the United Kingdom and FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods industry. And our observation period is from 1995 to 2012. And the other data set that we have is from the US automobile industry, and our observation period starts in 1946 and it ends at 2008. So a few things about these two data sets. We intentionally chose FMCG industry because we already have data on automobile industry. And just like I tried to allude to just a few minutes ago, automobiles are very different from FMCG products like toothpaste, shampoo, and everything. So in having these two data sets focusing on two different products, it gives us a chance to look into different implications of launching products during recessions. If I were to get just a tad bit technical, cars are considered to be high involvement products, in the sense that whenever we are buying a car, we conduct good research. We read customer reviews, expert reviews. Basically we don't just go into whichever car seller and buy the first car we see. So it's a highly involved process for customers. Many people buy just a few cars, during their lifetime, maybe 5, maybe 10, but just fewer cars during their lifetime. So it's a high involvement product. On the other hand, FMCG industry is a nice contrast to this, because we buy shampoo, toothpaste, and similar products regularly. We don't necessarily need to read a lot of reviews about them before we buy them. They can even be what we call impulse purchases. You just go to the supermarket to buy something, and you just see, I don't know, a new a new package, and say, yeah, I'll just give it a shot. I already have shampoo at home, but I'll just have it here, and just try it. So these are what we call low involvement products. We don't really put in too much thought. So we are comparing two data sets. And when it comes to the US automobile industry, 1946 is an important year in the automobile industry because from 1941, 1942, all of the automotive manufacturers in the US stopped producing cars and they start producing war equipment, planes and tanks and this and that. So in that sense, 1946 is kind of like a renaissance in the automotive industry. After 4 years of hiatus to the production, they resume, and we end our observation period in 2008, because 2008 is the year where we had the major recession. When we were working on this research project, reviewers always told us that you need to have considerable amount of time until the end of that recession to meaningfully understand the effects of the 2008 recession, and we didn't have it. We just didn't want to wait for too long, so we just cut our observation period in 2008. We have all of the cars ever sold in the United States during that period, even very, very small manufacturers or large European manufacturers who tried to enter the US market, but they were not successful, let's say like Citroën. Right? Citroën tried to enter the US market. It's a large company in the other parts of the world, but they made let's say, a small entry. They just tried with their cars, didn't work, but still, it's in our data set. Small Italian car manufacturers, not small, they are small because they manufacture high-end luxury cars, I don't know, like Ferrari, Lamborghini, and we have those, we have everything. We have all of the cars. When it comes to the FMCG industry, our observation period is from 1995 to 2012. There is not anything particular about those years, but our data provider was able to give it just that much. So, but there are still some recessions in the United Kingdom during that period. In our UK data, we got the data from this company called embarks. We have about 9,000 products launched during this 18-year period. And our data is monthly, so when you look at our data set, we have about 187,000, let's say, rows in our data set. For each product, we have multiple months. And during the United Kingdom, there were 2 recessions. You might be familiar with this organization. It's a government organization in United Kingdom, Office of National Statistics. They decide officially when there's a recession. And according to them, during this period, from 1995 to 2012, there were only 2 recessions. One of them is mild, one of them is severe. When it comes to the US automobile industry, we collect data from various sources, and our data has 63 years of observation period. We have about 1,000 models from 146 different brands. And during that period, 11 recessions occurred in the US. Now it's a longer period and more recessions. And in the United States, it is the National Bureau of Economic Research, NBER, that decides whether there's a recession or not, and we got the recessions from them, like the recession dates. And these are those recessions. As you can see, in the United Kingdom, there was one recession in May 2008, and between May 2008 and January 2010. This is like the major one. And the GDP decline was 7.2%, which is a very, very big number. Even just a couple of percentage points decline in GDP can cause severe effects on the economy. 7.2 is really huge. Whereas 0.5, it's not that big of a recession. So nobody even feels it. In the United States, we have as I said, 11 recessions. To a certain extent, you will know 2008, 2009 recession, 2007, 2009 recession, March 2001, 2000. It was a severe recession during November 1973, and between November 1973, March 1975, there was another relatively severe recession. This was because of the oil crisis, for instance. So, multiple recessions with different declines in GDP and different lengths. For instance, 1981-1982 recession, it lasted 16 months, whereas January 1980, July 1980, although there was considerable decline in GDP, that recession lasted only 6 months. So these are the recessions in our data set. In our analysis, we have various variables, and if I were to explain them, exit is what we are looking into. This is our dependent variable. We try to see how all the other variables explained under exit, listed under exit, how they affect a product's exit from the market. And why we look into exits, we say that if a product is not available on the market anymore, it exited the market, and usually products exit the market because they are not successful. Successful products, they tend to stay on the market year after year. But if a product is not successful, companies will take it off the market. Exception, seasonal products, for instance. Certain products, they are made available, I don't know, every year during Christmas time. Okay, certain products, they just come up, and after Christmas, they go back, up and down, up and down. So, but a regular product is expected to be available after it was launched every time. So if a product exits the market, it means we regard it as a failure of that product. And we just try to see how launching a product during recession, I will try to explain in the subsequent tables, we try to look into how launching a product during a recession, affects the probability of that product's exit. So when you launch a product during recession, is it more likely to exit the market at some point or less likely? So we are looking into it. We also have the severity of the recession. We look into it with this variable, launch during, if a product is, well, first of all, if a product is launched during a recession, it was quoted as well in the data that, maybe this is too much of a technical detail, but we also look into the GDP decline. If there's a more decline in GDP, we will say it's a more severe recession. And how does it affect the probability of exit? We also look into the effect of launching a product during the first half of the recession. So you will remember I mentioned what should you do? I mean, if the recession started, you know that the recession has started. What should you do? Should you launch your product immediately or just wait a little bit? With these two variables, we kind of look into that. If a product is launched in the first half of the recession, or we call this variable as one, or second half of the recession. So we distinguish between the effects of two. Still launch timing, still during recessions, but one is for the first half, the other one is for the second half. And you also want to see whether or not launching a product before or after recession. How does it affect? I mean, let's say you launch the product and 2 months later there's a recession. So how does it affect the probability of that product's failure, or launching a product after the recession? Let's just say that the recession ended and you launched your product immediately, or maybe a few months after the end of the recession. How does it affect the probability of failure of that product, probability of exit of that product? So these are our main variables. We are essentially looking into those, and the remaining variables are what we call control variables. We are controlling for the effects of these. For instance, a product is already on the market, but a recession happens. So we just take it into account. If it's a year before the recession, we also take it into account. If it's a year after recession, we also take it into account. New generation, especially in the automotive industry, you will know that a car will be launched, and after a certain amount of time, it will be upgraded, right? There's going to be a new generation of that product. You'll have a new design, better product specifications and everything. It's still the same car brand, Toyota Corolla, for instance, but the car is different. And over time, the car becomes completely different, right? It's kind of like how the car evolves over time based on market conditions. We take it into account as well. The number of products, other products launched by the same manufacturer, we incorporated to our dataset. For instance, Lipton, for instance, launching new tea bags, new tea designs, that will also have an impact. Sales, we control for the effects of sales, because if a product is selling well, it is less likely to exit the market. So we want to control for the effects of sales. And the last two are related to competition. If there are more new products on the market, it is not good news for your company, for your own product, so the probability of failure of that product will increase. New generations also, we are controlling for the effects of this. If, for instance, all of the competitors of Toyota Corolla, let's say Honda Civic, and this and that, if they launch new generations and Toyota doesn't, it is not good for Toyota. It's kind of like staying behind its competition. So it will need to introduce its own generation as well. So these things have impact on probability of failure as well. But these are all control variables. All of the variables that start with L are variables of interest. These are our main variables. Any questions so far? Okay. The results. So we have three models here. We ran different equations. We estimated different equations. In the first one, we are looking into we are trying to answer the question, what happens when you launch a product during a recession, okay? The numbers are not really super important in this context. What's important is whether or not the number is negative or positive. Positive means, a positive number indicates that whatever that variable is, it increases the chances of survival. Or stated differently, it decreases the probability of failure. or it extends the lifetime of the product, life expectancy of the product. So in a nutshell, the positive sign is good for a company and the negative sign is bad for a company. And as you can see, if you look into the first column here, we see that launching a product during recession positively impacts the probability of survival. So in a way, products launched during recessions in United Kingdom, so FMCG products, shampoos and this and that, if they are launched during recession, they are more likely to survive. If they are launched right before recession, they are also more likely to survive. But if they are launched right after recession, they are less likely to survive. And we look, the other variables are not, as I said, that important because we are just trying to control for their effects. In the second column, we look into the recession magnitude. What we see here is we have what we call a nonlinear impact. As the recession gets more severe, your product is less likely to survive, or the life expectancy of your product declines. Okay, but when you look into the nonlinear impact, beyond what this means is, it is positive, and what this means is beyond a certain amount of severity, your probability of survival, the probability of your survival for your product increases. So in mild recessions, you have a better chance of survival. In very, very severe recessions, you have a good chance of survival, but somewhere in between, you have a less chance of survival in terms of recession magnitude. There is what we call a U-shaped effect. A high survival, low survival, high survival. And when we look into the first half versus second half, we see that launching a product during the first half of the recession is not good because it decreases your probability of failure. It increases the probability of your failure. Launching in the second half is actually good. It increases the probability of your survival. So at least this is what we find for the United Kingdom data. When we look into the US data, the results are more or less the same. If you launch a product during recession, if you launch a car during a recession, it has a good chance, it has higher chance of survival, a higher chance of being successful. The same thing as there's kind of like a U-shaped effect in less severe recessions or in mild recessions. Launching a product is good. In very severe recessions, launching a product is also good. And the first half, second half is really very similar across data sets as well. We were kind of surprised, to be honest, when we found these similar results, because we were expecting, we have two different countries, two different types of products, and as I said, as I tried to imply during the beginning of my presentation, you were expecting to, it is normal for us to expect different effects. Maybe cars would be more affected by recessions, whereas, low involvement products like FMCG products would be less affected. But the result came out in the same way, more or less. So initially, actually, we thought that we are getting something wrong. Maybe during the analysis, maybe or during the data collection, we made a mistake. But we really controlled for pretty much. We checked everything again and again, and these are the results. So it is kind of surprising for us to see the same pattern across industries, across two industries and two countries. All in all, again, launching a product during recession increases the probability of survival. Mild recessions and very severe recessions are good for product launches. And if you want to launch a product during a recession, just try to launch it in the second half of the recession. These are the findings that we have. If we look into some figures, so these are the smoothed hazard estimates. This is for all of the products. I mean, if I were to explain this, it's really very simple. From 0 to 60, 0 is the time when a product was launched to the market, and 60 is 60 time periods after its launch. For the FMCG products, it is months. For the cars, it is years. All right. And as you can see, when a product is first launched to market, its probability of failure is high. Over time, it declines, and then it increases again. And this results in a way one of the indicators for us that there aren't any problems with our data, because this is what we would expect to happen. This is the same for companies as well. When you launch a new company, within the first few years, your chances of going bankrupt is really high. But then once you make it, I mean, the probability declines. But over time, if you stay behind your competition, your probability of failure will increase again. So what I'm trying to say is, I mean, this is an indicator for us about the validity of our data set. And when we look at here, we have 3 lines. Again, each line shows the probability of failure over time. And as you can see, the lowest probability of failure is for the red line. And this is when you launch a product during a recession. Again, this is across industries over a considerable amount of time. And if you launch a product just before a recession begins, at the end of a boom period, your chances of failure are the highest. Just a few more graphs. This was what I was talking about. If the GDP decline is minimal, your life expectancy is high. If it gets to a certain point, your predicted life expectancy will go down. But I mean, if in really, really severe recessions, more severe recessions, or the more severe the recession gets, the probability of survival or predicted life expectancy increases again. This applies, the same thing applies to US data and also the UK data as well. As I said, I mean, this similarity we weren't expecting, but I mean, we have. We also looked into market shares instead of probability of survival. We looked into market shares. The same thing. Products launched during a recession, over time, they tend to have higher market shares. They end up having high market shares if a product is launched during a recession. In the UK market, and the same thing in the US market, products launched during a recession, they tend to enjoy higher market shares during their lifespan if they are launched during a recession. And when we look at the sales patterns, not market share, but sales, when you launch a product during a recession, it tends to sell a little bit more compared to launching a product during a non-recessionary period. In the UK data, this difference is more obvious, whereas in the US data, the difference is relatively small, but still, products launched during the recession sells more. They sell more. Mild versus severe. we have some contradictory results here. Mild recessions, they tend to sell well. Yeah, and here there's a crossover for the US market. If you launch a product during a severe recession, your sales will be lower at first, but then they will surpass. First half, second half, the same thing. If you launch a product in the second half, it is like even almost from the beginning in the UK market, and in the US, it's the same thing. So launching a product during the second half is good. So this went on a little bit longer than I expected, but this is the end of my presentation. So any questions, any comments?
Thank you very much. It's very, very interesting talk. So it's amazing how you count this. The results is this, but so this is the time to start to propose a model. This is a lot of work.
Yeah.
How to model this. So questions. Maybe we can start from the remote
remote participants.
Participants. Is there any question from remote participants? So, thank you for such an interesting lecture by Tatiana. Tatiana is the first floor. So, what about questions? Because you can go discussing it.
Yes.
For discussing. Thank you. So, questions or comments from our Christian? Have you questions or? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Not from my side, but thank you so much for the presentation. Well, maybe I have a small question. To what extent have you compared your outcomes between different types of products? For example, so because if I understood, so you use the automobile data. But how does it compare, for example, with basic products that people need to survive, so products that people need for their everyday life? So I guess I would suppose that the behavior compare of this basic living products might differ a little bit from products that are more, I would say, related to luxury or second needs. So do you see any? How does it compare between both types?
Yeah, excellent question, Christian. We try to make a comparison of cars to the, as I said, FMCG products. Like the products you can buy on a supermarket. I mean, not all of them are necessities, by the way. I mean, it's not like a bread or food. So, I mean, it might be helpful to look into that. Thank you for the suggestion. And I believe I couldn't hear like super crystal clear, but maybe you might have mentioned something related to luxury, maybe. It's an excellent point because we know that, luxury products, they are not really affected too much by the recession. And, it might be a good idea for us to look into those, luxury cars, for instance, luxury cars versus regular cars. Yeah, thank you.
So come again to work on this.
I want to come, of course. It will be great.
Tatiana.
Yes, a question?
Yeah.
Tatiana?
You can ask your questions directly.
Are these products the same or they are variant? What is your question, Tatiana?
This is also a very good question. The two questions actually.
Yes,
Products usually exit from the market during crisis periods, and are these products the same or do they vary? This is a very good question. But for this project, we didn't look into. We looked into the detail, but we did not publish the details. And we have some information about what type of products exit the market, and for the automotive industry, it's usually the products of the companies that are not in good financial shape. But I mean, we just, for the US data set, we couldn't include it for a variety of reasons. But when it comes to product characteristics, there is not a lot of variation. I mean, if it's a car, and it's a car, sometimes, I mean, more reliable cars, they tend to perform better during recessions. I mean, for instance, when you look into Toyota Corolla, it is known to be reliable, as opposed to, I don't know, some kind of like a Chrysler car, a Chrysler brand car, they are less reliable. So they do worse during recessions compared to Toyotas. But I mean, in general, they do worse anyway. So it's hard for us to identify the impact of recession in low performance. But I mean, we are looking into, I mean, we keep working on this idea. So thank you for the questions. The second one, yes, there is some variation, but we don't know exactly why. For the first one, you know, it's usually if the company is in worse financial shape, their products tend to go out of business first.
Other questions from the remote participants, so we can discuss here or upstairs yourselves for the present zone. So go ahead.
I have a few questions.
Few questions,
I'm very much apart from the subject. I do not know in details about the subject, so a few questions that arose in my mind.
Okay.
Like, for example, the first one that I would like to know, like, irrespective of the market or the GDP of that country or that marketplace where the product has been launched, the results are truth in every situation. Like, for example, you took market of cars and regular products in two markets of US and UK.
Yes.
Both of these countries have quite a higher standard of GDP. If we compare it to a third world country or a developing country like India or Pakistan or some country like that. So are the results will be very much similar in that situation if you compare the releasing a car in an Indian market during a recession?
Yes. I mean, by yes, I mean, I don't know. Because it's, we don't have data. And I think it's a very good idea to look into that. That's a question that we also thought about. You know, can we look into, because when we do it, I mean, even if you look at my research profile, on, you know, like if you compare countries, you know, same thing, how this happens in this country versus this. Very good question. And I mean, you are correct that both UK and US are, they are both developed markets, right? So it will be better if you could look into like a developing, like an emerging market, right? Versus a developed market. That might be the second step. We have data on automotive industry for India, for instance, right? I mean, I have detailed data, and you know we can look into it. The only problem might be, it's not even a problem, but I don't know, for instance, right at the top of my head, how I can identify a recession, say, in India or in Turkey, because I mean, in Turkey, especially in Turkey, okay, I mean, are we still recording this? So, it's okay, especially in Turkey, I mean, you know, the government, for instance,